welcome to my version of Georgetown Basketball, my podcast episode of Georgetown Basketball here on Wendell's World in Sports. Speaking about the love of my life, the Georgetown Hoyas. Been a fan of Georgetown for over 40 years. Been a fan back in the days of Eric Smith, back in the days of John Bay Duran, back in the days of Eric Sleepy Floyd, back in the days of Craig Sky Shelton, back in the days of Billy Martin, back in the days of David Wingate, back in the days of Patrick Ewing, heading all up to Allen Iverson, heading on up to Boubacar Al, heading on up to Robert Churchill, heading on up to Jonathan Allen, heading on up to all those guys, heading on up to John Thompson Jr., Craig Esserich, JT3, and now Patrick Ewing has been a lifelong fan of Georgetown growing up in the Washington metropolitan area. And even though I have relocated for the last 20-something years to Las Vegas, Nevada, my love for my Georgetown Hoyas have not waned one bit. Through coaching changes, through good and bad, through Final Fours, through championships, through irrelevancy, to where they are now, I'm going to remain a huge fan. I'm going to remain loyal to my Georgetown Hoyas, ride till I die, till death do us part. It's almost like a marriage, right? It's almost like having children. You know, even when they're doing horrible, even when they disappoint you, even when they're doing bad, even when they disappoint, even when you don't think that they can amount to anything, you still love them, you still have hope, you still hope that somehow, some way that you can get them to be the children or the spouse or whatever that you hope they're going to be. Well, that's my way with the Georgetown Hoyas. No matter if they're winning championships like they did in '84, reaching Final Four like they did in 2007, making the NCAA tournament after a long layoff like they did last season, or whether they're at the end of the Craig Esserich era, the end of the JT3 era, or where they are right now. I am going to live, I am going to cheer, I am going to be realistic about my Georgetown Hoyas, but whether they're doing good, whether they're doing bad, I'm always going to give my love for my Georgetown Hoyas. And you can be critical of Georgetown, no doubt about it. You can be very critical when they're doing bad, when they're not performing well, where the program is right now. But I hope for all my Georgetown fans that you still keep the love for that team going strong. So I'm not one of those when people start yelling and screaming about they need to fire Patrick Ewing. I don't think of those guys as being haters. I just think of those people who are very passionate about Georgetown basketball, and they want to see everything possibly done to get Georgetown back to the prominence that they were 30, 40, even 15, 10 years ago. So I understand when you're speaking about, changes and things need to be made. I'm not coming from a hateristic standpoint. I just try to come from a realistic standpoint in terms of what the Georgetown basketball program is all about, who's the head coach of that basketball program, what that coach has done in his 5 years as coach of the Georgetown basketball program, and where it's going to be going. So that's where I'm coming from when I speak about what's happening this season with the 2021-2022 Georgetown Hoyas. Now the losing streak is at 5 games after losing on the road this past week to Providence, losing this past weekend at home to Villanova. Against Providence, they lost 83-75. Villanova, they lost 85-74. You want to take some positive and negatives from both games. I think untimely turnovers and decision-makings played a role in each of the losses. Kerry, if you think about the Providence game where they were down 64-60 before 28 left to go, Kerry had a huge offensive foul against Providence. Then on the next defensive possession, they couldn't get a back rim rebound, which turned into a three-point shot on the left side that made it 67-60. Just little things like that. Just little 50-50 type of balls like that, which can determine whether you're going to win the game or improve your opportunity to win the game or greatly enhance your opportunity to lose the basketball game. I thought the offensive inefficiency from key players at key times were devastating to us. Moving forward, we have to find some type of structure in terms of what the roles, what the responsibility of this team is going to be, or what are our expectations, what are the fans' expectations. Now, the coaches' expectations might be a lot different from the fans' expectations, but when I'm taking a look at this basketball team, the way it's constituted right now, and the decision for Coach Ewing to go ahead and insert Colin Holloway into the starting lineup in replacing Caden Rice, which I think was the right decision. Then again, I'm not Patrick Ewing, I'm not a coach or anything like that, but as I mentioned before in my other podcast, when you're speaking about Caden Rice, if he's not shooting well, again, I have to ask the question, what exactly does he do? He doesn't enforce the defense because he's not a driver. He's not putting the ball on the floor and creating for himself. He's not creating for anybody else. He's not getting to the free throw line. He's not putting any pressure on the defense. And when he's playing defense. He's not really that good. He's slow-footed. His metrics on defense is not very good. So if Caden Rice is not going to be hitting threes, and I understand when Donald Kerry was out, you needed somebody on the floor to stretch the defense, especially to open up the driving lane for Dante Harris, opened up the driving lane for Aminu Muhammad, opened up the driving lane for Colin Holloway. But now since Donald Kerry is back to provide that type of responsibility, and I think that he's more consistent if you take a look at the metrics, if you take a look at his game-to-game situation in terms of three-point shooting, while Caden Rice can go hot and cold, he can go incredibly hot or ice cold. I think Donald Kerry gives you more of, you're not going to be going 7 for 10. You're not going to be doing those type of things that you're Donald Kerry from the three-point line, but you're also not going to be going 1 for 12 or 0 for 9. And I think that also in other aspects of the game, Donald Kerry gives you more than what Caden Rice can give you, which is all to say, once the return of Donald Kerry was back for Georgetown, the need to be playing Caden Rice 35 minutes and living with his bad defense, living with his 1 for 9 shooting from the three-point line was no longer needed. And the play of Colin Holloway, led him to be in the starting lineup. So moving forward, and Big East play, when I say that some of the negatives, which I took away from the two games that I saw against Providence and against Villanova, one of the things in terms of when I talk about offensive inefficiency from the key players or consistency from the key players, I need to see more consistency on a game-to-game basis. We're going to have Colin Holloway. If Colin Holloway is going to be moved into the responsibility to where, look, you're going to be one of our main scorers. You're going to be one of our versatile scorers, right? I mean, he's a guy who potentially can be a very astute three-level type of scorer. He can score at the rim. He can score from the mid-range. He can score from the three-point line. He has a very good three-point shot, a consistent three-point shot, a shot where you have to respect and you have to guard. He can also make his free throws, so he's a guy that can also draw contact. When he goes to the line, he can convert his free throws. So I think in terms of versatility and what the offense can be, I think the focal point of that right now is going to be Colin Holloway. I don't think that Dante Harris is a consistent enough jump shooter to take that responsibility. And with the forward-making responsibilities, I don't think it would be fair to also put that type of responsibility, that type of added pressure on to Harris. I think that Don Kerry is a good three-point shooter, stretch shooter, mid-range shooter, but he's not a guy who can get to the rim with any type of consistency and finish around the rim with any type of consistency. I think Caden Rice is a one-trick pony. I think that Aminu Muhammad is starting to gradually get into his role of a guy who, from about 12 feet in, he's very effective. I think that he's a guy that is more comfortable playing with his back to the basket around 8 to 10 feet from the basket and moving on in than someone who could take the ball from 19 feet from the wing and create for himself, create for others, get to the foul lines, or maybe pull up for a jump shot or create any type of offense for himself. So if you take a look at the guy who's going to be, I guess you could say, have that responsibility where if the shot clock is running down and they need to get themselves a good shot, that it's either going to be Dante Harris or it's either going to be Colin Holloway. Colin Holloway is going to be that guy. He's got to be more offensively efficient and consistent. Like, for instance, against Providence, he goes 1 for 9 from the field, 0 of 6 from the three-point line, scored 3 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists in 25 minutes. Then in the next game against Villanova, he scores 25 points, going 9 for 10 from the field, 2 or 3 from the three-point line, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, mainly to Muhammad in 36 minutes. That's fantastic. That's awesome. But let's also be realistic here. The games that Holloway had against Longwood, the games that Holloway had against Villanova, as far as the offensive execution or the offensive proficiency from Holloway is concerned, that's not going to be there every game. Holloway's not going to shoot 9 for 10 from the field every single game. But what we're hoping is for some type of medium. He's not going to go 9 for 10, but I'm also hoping that he's not going to go 1 for 9 from the field. If Holloway can average somewhere around 17 to 18 points a game, 16 to 18 points a game, shooting close to 50%, making a couple of threes, getting to the free throw line, continuing his chemistry that he seemed to have on the offensive end with Muhammad. That's what we need. We don't need these wild swings, especially when you're speaking about Big East play, especially when you're speaking about Georgetown trying to get a win. It's almost like, man, I would rather have those 25 points. I would rather have the game he had against Villanova be applied to the game against Providence. I think if he puts that type of performance against Providence, I think our chances of winning that game were much, much better than what he did against Villanova, mainly because of the matchup problem. So if Holloway's going to be our main scorer, if Holloway's going to be our go-to guy as far as scoring is concerned, I would like to see more consistency on a game-to-game basis, offensive consistency from that. Dante Harris, same thing. Last 2 games, he shot 8 for 20 from the field, 3 of 10 from the three-point line. He took a few ill-advised shots against Villanova. I was a little bit nervous when I saw him shoot that little bit step-back 3 from the right side at the in the first half against Villanova. It was the second make in a row, which caused Jay Wright to call a timeout. While I was happy that he made the shot and we were still in the ball game, I was a little bit nervous because I was thinking to myself, oh, Lord, I sure hope that he doesn't think that all of a sudden now he's going to be turning into Colin Gillespie in terms of shooting three-point shots. And there were some times, especially in the second half, when Villanova was either making their run or increasing their lead, that Harris took some ill-advised three-point shots without running any type of offense whatsoever, not moving the ball around the perimeter whatsoever. I think that he's gotten a lot better in terms of being judicious when he drives, when he shoots a three, when he shoots his jump shots. His pull-up jump shot, especially from the right elbow extended, is very good. I would love to see him do that a lot more. Sometimes when he barrels into the basket for shots, sometimes, especially with the bigger opponents, that he kind of flails and he kind of throws things up. He's looking more for the foul than he is trying to finish at the rim. I think that if he would just start to continue to be proficient from that 12 to 16-foot range in terms of that pull-up jump shot, then I think for Georgetown it would be awesome. Man, just take a look at clips of Chris Paul in terms of how he's perfected that mid-range game. Not saying that Dante Harris needs to be at that level, but in terms of the college level is concerned, I would love to see Harris do more of a pull-up 12 to 15 jump shot, right, left elbow, than sometimes he does trying to drive to the basket, especially as I mentioned before, as he's trying to draw the foul. Donald Kerry, another guy who I think that we need to rely on, not just more for his leadership and his experience, but also a guy who can stretch the floor. When I speak about offensive consistency from guys who we needed. Against Providence, he scored 21 points, 7 for 13 shooting, 5 for 9 from the three-point range, 7 rebounds in 35 minutes. Offensively, in that game, Kerry was our best player. But then against Villanova, he scored 11 points, 4 for 14 shooting, 1 assist from the three-point line, and 7 assists in 38 minutes, which was good. I love the 7 assists, but you know, we're going to be needing you a little bit more in terms of offensive consistency. I think realistically, if you take a look, on a consistent basis, Georgetown Hoya basketball fans, Hoya Saxa, I think if we could get Don Kerry to average 13 points, Dante Harris to average somewhere around 12 points, Holloway to average 16 points, 17 points, and then everybody else just kind of fills in. If we can get that type of consistency in terms of scoring is concerned. So when I say that, Colin Holloway needs to average 18 points a game, I'm not saying that one game he scores 26 and then the next game he scores 10. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying that, one game he's shooting 11 for 14 from the field and then the next game he's shooting, 3 of 13. We need to have more offensive consistency. We need to have more offensive balance because outside of Kerry, outside of Harris, outside of Kerry, and outside of Holloway, who else are we going to rely on to be consistent scorers? I know everybody wants to point to Aminu Muhammad. I know that right now Muhammad is either the leading scorer on the team or he's right up there, but Muhammad, as of right now, is not proficient enough to when we need to get a basket that he can consistently get a basket. Sometimes he might be able to take advantage on the inside matchup if the guard's on him or something like that. But just in terms of scoring on a consistent basis, when you're speaking about the versatility that Colin Holloway's had, I would rather have Holloway have the ball in his hands doing some things than Aminu Muhammad. As I mentioned before, if you want to get the ball to Aminu on the right side of the court and kind of, clear out and give him an ISO so he can eventually start backing down and do his up and unders and do his fakes and do his that type of performance from about 6 to 8 feet after backing his way down. That's fine, but I don't think that is going to be proficient enough as of right now for Georgetown to get to be where they want to be, which is winning a couple of these basketball games. So, again, you take a look at the players who have the versatility to score in a myriad of ways, much more than, say, a Aminu Muhammad or a Caden Rice, most definitely a Timothy Ego F.A., right now a Tyler Beard, right now a Ryan Matumbo, right now a Jalen Billingsley. I think that the three guys that they're going to need to count on, Harris, Holloway, and Kerry, need to be much more proficient, much more consistent in what they're doing. And it leads to, again, when Georgetown goes on these runs, we need to have their runs be more sustained. Look, every basketball team, whether you're talking about the NBA or whether you're talking about college, are going to go through droughts. Sometimes the droughts for Georgetown are absolutely maddening. I get it. I understand it. You see when they lose these basketball games that they were outscored. They only had one field goal over 5 minutes, or they were outscored by this team 22-8. In fact, against Villanova, Georgetown in the critical moments missed 12 of 11 of 12 shots. Villanova went on the 22-8 run, which put the game squarely in their command. So, look, I understand in terms of I want to see Georgetown become more efficient. I don't want to see Georgetown go through these 5, 6, 7, 8-minute slumps. But it happens, and it happens to everybody. It happens to Villanova. For a team like Villanova, they're going to have some games where they're going to shoot 8 for 37 from the three-point line. There's going to be games when you see these guys out there playing who, especially when some of these teams who are highly ranked rely on the three-point shot so much, they're not going to be able to sustain any type of scoring consistency, because if on a particular night they're not making three-point shots, and you take a look at the game we had against Butler not being a proficient three-point shooting team, but in the first half, if you remember that game against the Bulldogs, how many wide-open three-point shots when we were running that 2-3 zone did Butler miss? At one time, they were shooting, 30% from the three-point line heading into halftime? Now, eventually, they picked it up. So what I'm trying to say is that I can live. If you're a Georgetown fan, if you're following the team, I can live with Georgetown going 2, 3, 4 minutes without scoring, or without having a field goal, or going on a stretch where they're 2 of 7 or 1 of 6 or something like that. But man, these prolonged periods of time where they sometimes go 7, 8, 9 minutes where they're not scoring. That was the difference with the Providence game. The Providence game, the start of the game, they went, 8 minutes without scoring? They fell behind, 13-0 or something like that? Then they had another stretch at the beginning of the second half where they dug themselves a hole, which they ultimately couldn't get out of, even though they were valiant in their effort and in their trying to get back into the game. So I would just like to see, and it goes, once again, it goes to Holloway, it goes to Harris, and it goes to Kerry in terms of being the responsible folks who can go ahead and end those droughts. You know, one of the great things that happens in basketball is that we speak about, sometimes it ain't the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes. We don't have that All-American. We don't have that bucket getter in terms of, look, we've gone 4 possessions now trying to run some stuff where we haven't gotten anything. We need to just basically take a look, and this is what happens with NBA basketball, right? They pick and roll people to death until they get the matchup that they want, until the offense gets the mismatch that they want on offense, and they take advantage of it. We don't have that at Georgetown. We don't have that guy to where it's going to be a significant advantage for us to clear aside and let Donald Kerry or Dante Harris or Aminu Muhammad or Colin Holloway or a Tyler Beard or any of those guys go to work, quote unquote, go to work on somebody. We don't have that. We don't have that guy to where, look, forget the offense, just give him the ball, clear it aside, and have him go get a bucket for himself, have him get to the line, have him get a wide open look for somebody else. But we just basically need to get some points on the board. We don't, as good as Colin Holloway has been, he's not that guy just yet. Dante Harris, because of his inefficient and inconsistent outside shooting and his inability to finish at the rim, is not going to be that guy. Donald Kerry, because he's mainly a mid-range to three-point shooter, is not going to be that guy. So I can understand why the roadblock in terms of having a more consistent offense during the game can sometimes hit a snag because if you took a look at that Villanova game and you saw Colin Gillespie just back down Dante Harris and up and under him for foul shots and layups, we don't have that. We don't have anybody that we can throw it to the post and just have him work and go one-on-one. Timothy Igwefe is definitely not that guy. Ryan Mutombo just yet is not that guy. Malcolm Wilson is not that guy. And if you took a look at that game against Villanova, where it was just a matter of, look, we went through a little bit of a stretch at your Villanova where the three-point shots weren't falling in. So I know what we'll do. We'll just get the ball to Samuels, and we'll just have him get the ball at the top of the key or at the free throw line, or we'll work one side of the court and we'll kind of, let him go one-on-one against Colin Holloway, and Holloway couldn't guard him. Holloway could not guard him, just like with Colin Gillespie. How did he get going? Put the ball back into his hands, backed in on Dante Harris. Not big enough, not strong enough, not tall enough, and that was the deal. And it was like that over and over and over again, and that's really how Villanova made their comeback. The fact that, Colin Gillespie, Justin Moore, Jermaine Samuels, all were better basketball players as far as offensively is concerned than Georgetown, and they found that weakness and they kept attacking it. You can thank Greg Popovich and USA Basketball in terms of Jay Wright kind of figuring out this is how the game really should be played, or this is how the game is played in the NBA, right? You go ahead, you find who the weakest matchup is as far as defense is concerned. You put him on the best defense. You switch him. You pick and roll him. You do everything that you can to get him. You isolate him, and then you let him go to work. Well, that's what Colin Gillespie and Justin Moore and Jermaine Samuels were doing against Georgetown, where they combined to shoot 24 or 38. That's 63% from the field. So it was a situation like that. So we don't have anybody like that. Dante Harris, Don Kerry, and Colin Holloway are not going to be shooting 63% from the field and getting 42 points in the paint like Villanova did, because we don't have the offensive talent right now to take advantage of any of the defense that we're going to be going with. So it's just going to be means that Horns and Iversons, the stuff that we run and the high pick and rolls that we run, we're going to have to be much more efficient, and we're going to have to really, really run our offense to a T, because as I mentioned before, when it breaks down, and you saw this plenty of times, you saw Donald Kerry try to go one-on-one. You saw Aminu Muhammad try to go one-on-one. You saw what happened. Not very good. One of the reasons why Donald Kerry went 4 for 14 shooting against Villanova. 1 for 6 from the three-point line. How many of those 6 three-point attempts against Villanova were desperation, end of the shot clock, contested three-point shots? So we're going to have to get a little bit better with that. Individual and team defense, speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas, speaking about your Georgetown Hoyas, look, we're just not a very good defensive basketball team. We're just not. We're just not. We don't have the players. We don't have the athleticism. We don't have the defensive talent. We don't have the defensive wherewithal. I don't think it's a matter of Coach Ewing and the fellas not giving a damn about defense. I just think it's a matter of who is our defender. Again, we could take a look at the two teams that we played, Providence and Villanova. Who was going to stop Nate Watson? We don't have anybody who can stop Nate Watson. I don't care who you have as a coach. Bill Self isn't going to get Timothy Igwefe to match up any better against Nate Watson. If you go ahead and you take a look at the game we had against Villanova, Colin Holloway can't guard Colin Gillespie. It's not a matter of scheme. It's not a matter of want to. It's not a matter of the coaches ignoring it. It's not a matter of the coaches putting in the game plan. It's just a matter of Colin Gillespie. It's a matter of Curtis Samuels. It's a matter of those three guys from Villanova were just more talented, better basketball players. And Jermaine Samuels could not be stopped. Why? Because as a fifth-year, sixth-year guy, he is much more experienced. He's much better as of right now than Colin Holloway when Holloway is playing defense and Samuels has the ball, especially when you're speaking about a guy when he's getting the ball 15 to 17 feet away from the basket. Justin Moore, who was, as we were told about plenty of times from DeMatha High School, the best basketball player His senior year in high school was recruited by everybody. 5-star recruit, goes to Villanova. We don't have any 5-star recruits that can consistently get in front of Justin Moore and keep him away from the basket. I thought Aminu Muhammad did a fantastic job, worked really hard, and making it hard for Justin Moore to get points. But we didn't have anybody. Colin Gillespie, we didn't have anybody to stop him. Tyler Beer isn't big enough. He only played 3 minutes. He made a couple of turnovers, and Coach Ewing said enough of this. Dante Harris wasn't going to be able to guard him, especially if he's going to be playing 35, 36, 38 minutes, and the responsibility that he has at the offensive end. By the end of that game, he was dead tired. So you have Colin Holloway playing more minutes than he's used to, and he's also going to have to be able to put the ball in the hoop and get shots for everybody else. And then on the other end, he's going to have to guard Jermaine Samuels. No wonder he got toasted on a consistent basis. So we're just not good defensive players right now. We just don't have the talent to be good defensive players. How are you going to get Caden Rice? Are you going to make Caden Rice a lot faster in terms of his moving of his feet? I mean, there is no scheme. There is no coach. I don't give a damn what Coach Krzyzewski couldn't turn this group into a lockdown defensive team. Bill Self couldn't do it. Jay Wright couldn't do it. Mark Few couldn't do it. Now, you could make the argument that they should be better than what they are right now. Okay, I'll buy that. But to expect Georgetown to all of a sudden put in a new coach with this group and all of a sudden they're going to be having teams score 70 points and less, not unless Georgetown wants to change their offensive system and slow it down a little bit, that ain't going to be happening. They are who they are. So as far as defense is concerned, it is what it is, because the interior defense, individual defense, are going to be a huge problem for the remainder of the season. Timothy Eagle-Fa is no deterrent at the rim at all. As I mentioned before, Villanova had 42 interior points on Saturday. Providence had 30 points in the paint this past week. Samuels was abusing Holloway 15 feet and in. So it was just the way it is. Eagle-Fa, Brian Matambo, Malcolm Wilson, they're not ready to play any role in Georgetown being competitive against high-quality caliber teams. There was plenty of times where Eagle-Fa had a switch against Villanova where he had a guard on him, but he didn't establish position. The guards, mainly Dante, was not comfortable feeding him in the post. And if you give the ball to Eagle-Fa in the post, say 5 or 6 feet away from the basket, are you confident that he's going to be able to do anything? I'm not. Are you confident that you get the ball into the post with Malcolm Wilson that he's going to be able to do anything? I like Ryan Matambo's game, but physically he's not ready to bang on a consistent basis with some of these guys. So it's just that's what it is in terms of what we're going to be dealing with. I like the positives, some of the positives that we took from the game against ranked opponents, one on the road. Georgetown was in a position to win the game. Now, this is 3 games in a row now. If you go back to St. John's when they were down 72-64 with 7:53 left to go in the game, they were going to cut the margin to 6. Amino turned the ball over to the next 3 possessions, which kind of puts the game out of reach. But if you think about where we were, and if you think about and watch those games and remember those games against Marquette and against Butler and against St. John's, the return of Patrick Ewing and Donald Kerry made a difference. If you take a look at those 3 games that I mentioned before, Marquette, Butler, and St. John's, and then take a look at the games between Providence, ranked 20th in the country, or 21st in the country, something like that, and then Villanova, who's ranked number 11 in the country, I think that Georgetown played well enough to say, look, they're not going to win the conference or anything like that, but after the game against St. John's, I did this podcast and I said, I don't think Georgetown's going to win another game. If this is the best that they can give out, if these first three games the conference play against Marquette, against Butler, and against St. John's, if this is going to be the level of play that Georgetown's going to be at, seriously, we're not going to win another game. I think the level that we played against Villanova and against Providence, we're going to win some games. Now, hip hip hooray! Give the guys the participation trophy along with their orange slices, and way to go. But it's progress, man. It's progress. It's absolutely progress. Against Villanova, and we had 4 players in double figures. Career high from Holloway, as I mentioned before, 25 points, 17 points from Harris, 25 field goals made. We had 18 assists against both Providence and Villanova. We had only 10 turnovers for a team that's been averaging a lot more. To say, quote unquote, only 10 turnovers is good for us. And I see some improvement. I really do. I see some improvement. I really see some really good improvement from Aminu. I do. As a freshman, you can say right now, Aminu Muhammad does remind me of Perry McDonald. Like if Perry McDonald was playing in the year 2020, he would be Aminu Muhammad right now. Because I think Muhammad plays just like him, except Aminu has a better jump shot and a better handle. And when I say those comparisons, just like Perry, who was a 6'4", he was listed as a 6'4" guard, but he never went outside of like 8 feet from the basket. Aminu works best from the inside out, relies on his athleticism, and he's been dominant in that way in the past. But ever since that St. John's game, if you take a look at Providence and you take a look at the game against Villanova, much, much better in terms of being under control, slowing it down just a little bit. It's just like in baseball, man. I don't care if you have a 102-mile-per-hour fastball. If all you're doing is throwing a 102-mile-per-hour fastball and you throw it right down the plate, eventually major league hitters are going to catch up to it and they're going to hit it out the park. Well, Aminu now is starting to learn how to pitch. If he was a baseball player, Aminu Muhammad right now is starting to learn how to play basketball in terms of, look, man, again, you don't need to be going balls to the wall all the time. Sometimes you need to slow down. Sometimes you need to observe. Sometimes you just need to, play under control. And the best example that I saw as far as like, okay, Aminu is starting to get it a little bit more, was about 18:40 left in the second half with Georgetown leading 42-37, right? Do you remember? Because Aminu stole the ball and he went down to the front court. The Villanova guy drove the baseline, tried to kick it back out, top of the key for a 3. Aminu was there. He stole the ball, and it was one-on-one. The guy was in front of him for Villanova, so it was one-on-one. And what did Muhammad do? He slowed down. I don't think in terms of the speed limit. I think that he was maybe a couple of miles over the speed limit. But going down that highway towards a one-on-one in that basket for Georgetown, he wasn't going 85 miles per hour. He wasn't putting the head down and just go charge. He wasn't doing any of that. He caught that ball. He went to the left side a little bit, and he was putting it at about 55, 60 miles per hour. In a 65 mile per hour zone by you. And there was no cars. There was no traffic. It was just one guy in front of him. Aminu took his time, went into the front court, and then made a beautiful bounce pass to a driving Dante Harris for a reverse layup. And I said, that young man's starting to get it. Because if you think about it, think about Aminu at the beginning of the season. Think about Aminu and Big East play, right? The first 3 games. What would have Muhammad done if he would have caught that ball 4 games ago, 3 games ago, 6 games ago, 7 games ago? That man would have put his head down and just would have tried to it would have been like a guy trying to split the defense on a deep route. And he would have been out of control. He would have forced up something. It would have been a funny looking shot, but he was under control. He had his head up. He waited for his teammates. And as I mentioned before, a one-on-one was created into a 2-on-1 because of the hustle by Dante Harris. Hit him with a beautiful bounce pass, one-handed bounce pass with the right hand. And Dante went ahead from the right side to the left side to make that basket, and it was beautiful. It's stuff like that where it's like, all right. This is where coaching comes into play. This is what I'm talking about. This is where it's like, okay, for those who are sitting there yelling and screaming about, Ewing can't do this, Ewing can't do that. The game that Colin Holloway had, the position, the responsibility that he has, if he can continue to grow with the job that he's doing, with the job that he's been given as far as being on the offense, being important to the offense is concerned, and he continues to grow, that's called coaching. A guy who, what did they say, was being recruited by McNeese State and Texas State, And he's doing this for Georgetown now in the Big East, especially after his freshman year where he barely played. That's called coaching. As much as we harp on the inefficiencies and weaknesses of Timothy Igwefe and Malcolm Wilson, did you think as a freshman that Malcolm Wilson would get any time, would be any type of player for Georgetown? Now, I'm not saying that he's a guy who's a 20 to 25 minutes a game type of player, but he sure is progressing a lot better than Bradley Hayes in his career at Georgetown. That's called coaching. These guys are getting better. You can argue about Dante Harris, the shooting regressing and stuff, but for the most part, the way that he's playing the point guard position right now, it's called coaching. He's getting better at that. He's maturing. He's learning. His decisions are a lot better on a consistent basis. It's called coaching, and it's getting better, which is giving me hope because unless the team completely falls apart, that Coach Ewing is going to be back for next season, that, man, I just hope that these guys, the core that we have, the freshmen that we have, the sophomores that we have will stay and continue on this pattern. I don't know what's going to be happening with Kobe Clark, but I take a look at this young squad, and I take a look at the potential of Holloway. I take a look at the potential of Dante Harris, and then I take a look at our four freshmen. One of them, by the way, isn't playing in terms of Jordan Riley because of him having shoulder surgery. So do I wish Ryan Mutombo was getting more time? Yeah, I do. Do I wish Jaden Billingsley was getting more time? Yeah, I do. But something tells me that through coaching and what they're doing to practice and Coach Krause and the rest of those guys, Coach Orr and such, that those guys are going to get better. Just because you're not being major contributors as freshmen doesn't mean that you're a bust. I know that in the day of one and done, and I know the threat of the transfer portal, I know all these things that we want to see some of these 5-star to 4-star recruits be like, impact players and be Kevin Durant's at Texas or be, really Carmelo Anthony's at Syracuse their freshman year right away. But realistically, that doesn't happen. Yeah, Georgetown had a top 20 class. They had Aminu Muhammad as a 5-star recruit, but does Ryan Mutombo look like somebody who should be going to the pros after 1 year? Did Jordan Riley look like a guy who was going to be all Big East his freshman year? Did Tyler Beard look like a guy who was going to be an impact player of high regard his freshman year going in? Did Jalen Billingsley look like a guy that was going to be a major player for Georgetown? So no. So when people speak about they try to equate the record as it stands right now with the fact that, Georgetown had a top 20 recruiting class. Why aren't they getting better? Well, let's take a look. Do you really want to see those four guys play all the time with the expectations that they should be able to beat a quality experienced team like a Villanova or a team like Xavier or a team like Providence or a team like Connecticut? No, man, this is a slow build. This is an absolute slow build, which I hope will be better as time goes on. We're going to be playing UConn this Tuesday. We're going to be playing UConn tomorrow. So we're going to get our doors blown off as stores. I hope that we're competitive, and man, I hope that I'm wrong, but that's a bad matchup for us, a really bad matchup for us. UConn is athletic. They're like Marquette times 3 in terms of their athleticism and what they can do. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge to get those guys off the board. It's going to be a challenge to get those guys in front, to keep those guys in front of us. It's going to be a challenge in terms of our transition from offense to defense. It's going to be a challenge, and it could get ugly. There's been some ugly games. Remember the last time we were at Stores and we played Connecticut? Wasn't good. So I'm just hoping that we can go ahead and we can improve. So hey, man, it's Georgetown. It's always about Georgetown. I'm always hoping. I'm always realistic about Georgetown. I'm always going to root for Georgetown. So whether we criticize or whether we're glass half empty, glass half full, I just want to let everybody know listening to this podcast, man, that, I'm Georgetown. I'm always going to be Georgetown. So that's about it. Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World and Sports, speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas. If you want to hear me talk about anything else in terms of the world of sports, because we did have an awesome NFL weekend, didn't we? With those games between Kansas City and Buffalo, the best game I think I've ever seen in my life. As of right now, the Buffalo-Kansas City game, Tampa and The Los Angeles Rams, is this Tom Brady's last game? Is this going to be Aaron Rodgers' last game in the NFL or with the Green Bay Packers after their loss to the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals getting by the Tennessee Titans despite the fact that Joe Burrow was sacked like 416 times? So those are the things I'm going to be speaking about on my podcast, Wendell's World of Sports. But yes, my special place in my heart is always going to be for my Georgetown Hoyas. So be good, keep rolling. Georgetown, Patrick Ewing, and Patrick we trust. In the program I trust, Dante Harris, Colin Holloway, Brian Matumbo, Timothy Ego F.A., all you guys, Jalen Billingsley, Tyler Beer, Caden Rice, all you guys, keep working hard, keep doing the things that you need to do, keep doing better, and let's all believe and trust in Patrick Ewing. Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World of Sports, speaking about my Georgetown Hoyas, Hoya Saxa, Hoya for life, Georgetown for life. Let's get it done.